Ladies and gentlemen, I did it again. I specifically said to Aaron, I got to make sure to add back the guys. I didn't do it in all of my multitasking. Welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast. Welcoming David. Are you not going to say anything? This is an audio podcast. And Chad Ochocinco Johnson.
That actually worked out in my favor so well because I just spat out my coffee with the awkward intro pause, but no one heard it. So,
hey, Chad, there's like a cloud. There's like a cloud on your head.
Yeah, man, I'm feeling it.
Luke,
cool.
Tiny Greenwood. What's up?
Greetings, brothers and sisters!
Oh, much fire.
My goodness. Again, I said to Aaron, see, I got this weird multitasking thing to do. See, for those that don't understand all of the buttons and dials that I have to push over here to make this thing work, I have to pull y'all from the live stream, transition the video, get y'all back on the live stream. But now I tried this new thing where I wanted music playing to try to soften the blow. And instead I made this super awkward transition into nothing. Nevertheless, welcome to the Provoke.
It was great.
What's a twaffer? What's a twaffer? I don't know what a twaffer is.
Matthew Brian Lasky. I am in Hawaii.
There are two of them today.
Hey,
What?
Jody wants to know, Chad, if you're in a looks
Hawaii?
like you're in a drug rehab program.
Yeah, that's tell her she wasn't supposed to spoil that on air. But yes, I am in a Hawaiian paradise tropical.
All right. Well, welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast, calling followers of Jesus to radical faith outside of the church. It is 5 of us goons today, just filling all of these celebrity squares with our heads and comments and such. Welcome, Aaron.
Hair up there.
Yeah. Well, you know what they say. There's hair up there. I got nothing. Is David still muted? He still seems muted.
No, it's
No?
cool, man.
First
We
world
don't judge you,
problems
Chad.
indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, so here we are, new week, a new time to shine, as they say. We're excited for all that is and all that is to come. We have a great week of podcast. David. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was like a terrible 90s CCM song lyric or something. I don't know what's going on. Chad's shinier than ever. Luke is looking awkward and nervous.
I know.
We're off to
I know.
a
It's
rip.
like if drive-in movies come back, we can use Chad's forehead.
That's true.
Screen.
Does anybody have a temporary projectile screen? I
Yeah.
do.
Oh, hey, mate.
I volunteer my forehead. Oh, what a
Y'all
hero.
So funny.
What a hero. Anyway, we greatly appreciate your support. You guys have been listening, and that means a lot to us because, after all, doing a podcast for no one is demoralizing. And you guys have been showing up. You've been rating the podcast. You've been reviewing the podcast. Actually, we've had a lot of ratings recently, but not as many reviews. I don't know what that's about.
What is that? Sorry. And another thing is, if the way that we increase the amount of people on the podcast is just increase our guests. So like now we have Aaron. So that means there's
We
another
all invite
person.
our grandmothers,
right?
And
That's true. That's true. Anyway, so please do that. Rate the podcast, review the podcast. I noticed that last time Aaron and I were on together, I looked tiny. So I'm going to try to fix that. Hold on.
yeah,
That's better.
just
It's
go
a-
further, Ben. Just keep going up.
Yeah, it's a dominance thing. What's up, Diego?
Yeah, go.
I don't want
Diego.
Paul. Can you stop saying twaffer?
Hey guys,
What?
speaking of drive-in movies, that was a cool thing. I've heard during the lockdown stuff that in some places they're doing drive-in concerts.
Yeah,
Have you heard of that? The drive-in concerts.
I have.
So I was thinking, what would be really cool would be to try stage diving in one of those.
Hey, in New Zealand now, it's completely virus free. Did you know that? Just completely.
I heard that.
Was that an attempt at a segue, or was that just your own?
No,
thought?
I hear Luke was talking about drive-ins. Here now, you can do everything. It's completely sanitized.
You can
So
drive
it's
everywhere.
but not that. Anyway,
Wait, so in
I
New
don't know why
Zealand,
I'm
you can
saying that.
right now. You can
Not
do
that
anything,
I'm sanitized. What?
you can do anything you want right now in New Zealand.
I muted him because he was really ruining the flow of this conversation. I will say that most of the stage dives that I've witnessed might as well have been at a drive-in concert because I feel like more often than not, the seas part way and the people plummet to the earth below.
That reminds me when we had Virgin Man.
I'm sorry. I'm
And
sorry,
he did
it's Monday.
Remember that? and this guy, he's like my.
That was
my
Aaron,
nephew.
The
right?
one in Brazil.
No,
where
was it
the
Aaron?
crowd parted and he landed on the ground.
Yeah, it was
Wasn't that
That was
Python.
Python. That was Python.
Yeah, because he hadn't washed his Virgin Man suit for like a month, and it just
Yeah,
he
exactly.
was kind of like wretched reek man or something like that.
All right, we
And
need
so
to
then
move
he-
on. We need to move
Yeah,
on.
right now I envision probably most listeners fast forwarding.
Yeah, which we've gotten around this problem, and here we are, thrust back into the middle of it all. So, Luke, quickly before we move on to something serious, tell us about the Compact School, the Steiger Compact School that just
Oh,
happened.
wow.
And, and I'm going to remove David from the stream temporarily because he always mocks you when you try to do something serious.
Exactly.
And let us know about it, how it went, and when we can expect the next one.
It was amazing. We had 850 people sign up for it. There was it was crazy on Zoom trying to have that many people, but it was beautiful. There's a real sense of community breaking out into small groups. Like we had, I think, something like 50 of our Steiger leaders from all around the world.
100.
leading small groups.
100. There's 100 small
100.
group, 100 small
That's
group
crazy.
leaders in 50 locations around the world.
There you go. So, and then, people really connected with it, and people are excited to get involved in the mission, to do something where they are. And we're going to do it again, David. We're going to do it again, right?
Yeah, we're going to do it again. I'm not. Do you know the dates, Aaron?
Yeah, July 10th and 19th. We're still working out the details in terms of timing, but July 10th and 19th is going to be the next Steiger online compact school. So look
Yeah,
out for
July,
that.
yeah.
By the end of this week, we'll have registration go out. And if it's anything like last time, we will sell out of them. So make sure you sign up quickly.
Yeah.
There were a load of
It's free.
listeners.
It doesn't cost
Yeah.
anything, but we have a limited number
Yeah.
of Zoom rooms.
That's
But we had
true.
people
And
from like 48 countries, and then it was a really, couldn't believe an online thing could be so cool.
Yep.
True. Especially
was the-
feeling so close to people, like with the interactions, the questions, just people felt close. And there are a lot of people, listeners to this podcast, who joined us there. So thank you guys for joining in the Compact School. It was awesome to have you there.
A question is being asked by, here goes nothing. You Belly, are the registrations open currently, or is that
Not
being
yet.
worked on?
It'll be open hopefully by, let's say, Thursday.
All right, that guy.
That's cool.
See
So
ya.
in a couple of days, so registration will be open, and it's going to be amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So that was very harmonious and peaceful. The way you guys just traded off information there, it was so peaceful. There was little contentiousness. It was great. Speaking of contentiousness, quite ironic of a little launch here. The topic of the day is all around the idea of engaging with the world. I think for those that have been alive, which is everyone, you'll be aware of the fact that we've had a lot going on. Of course, we had the whole coronavirus hit the entire globe, and that caused, of course, all sorts of change in people's lives. And then very recently, starting here in Minneapolis, we had the murder of George Floyd, which led to unrest throughout the world, and rightfully so, because people were so upset about the systemic racism and everything that led up to that, and rightfully want change to take place. Not only here in Minneapolis, but throughout the globe. But even though we are at a time, I would say, of heightened intensity as it relates to social issues and issues around the globe, this is certainly not something new. You have this time we live in with the advent of social media and the internet, combined with an increase in polarization and binary thinking and just people being highly opinionated. And it's kind of a minefield for followers of Jesus, I think, because I think we want to be relevant. As we talk about often on this podcast, we talk about being engaged with the culture. Yet I think if we're not careful, we can find ourselves becoming confused, distracted, or even deceived by all of the sounds, all of the noise, all of the information out there. And so the purpose of the conversation today is to equip followers of Jesus to relevantly, but lovingly and effectively interpret all of the sources of information out there, and then speak into it in a way that would actually accomplish something. Now, we certainly don't have all the answers, but that is our heart in this conversation, is to talk through that. So maybe, Aaron, starting with you, what just initial thoughts on this concept, things that you've been thinking about in this crazy time where there's so many opinions and so many posts? I feel like around this whole George Floyd thing, it just got to another level of social unrest and discontentment, and social media being flooded with views and counter views and thoughts and arguments.
Yep.
How do we navigate all this? How do we deal with this world that we now find ourselves in?
I think we're at a time in history when, because of social media, because of other things that are going on in the world, everyone has an opinion. And no matter what you're looking at, no matter what issue you're facing, there's going to be people that come at it from different perspectives. And our ability to engage with each other, let alone Christians engaging the world, is so broken down right now that we continually are looking at each other as an us versus them mentality. And we in the church have very much been a part of that, and our ability to engage with people, to approach people with humility and grace, and to understand, to really empathize other people's point of view, we're so bad at that generally. And so as a result, we're just yelling into the void, and no one's hearing each other, and no one's mind is being changed. And there's no good, I'd say no, there's very little helpful dialogue going on. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that makes me saddest is that Christians are far from immune to that. In fact, we're very much engaged in that.
Often
and
at the forefront.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what do we do, guys? I mean, my main question here was, how does a follower of Jesus stay informed without becoming distracted, confused, or led astray? David, what do you think? Because there is so much out there, and part of the problem, right, on a very fundamental, basic level, is just quantity. There's just too much information that you don't necessarily represent yourself as well as you want to necessarily, in a large part because you have so much coming into your mind. How can you possibly think and communicate clearly in that kind of context?
Well, again, I think the biggest it's probably always been a challenge, but I think now it's even more of a challenge to find out what's really going on, what the true facts are.
Right.
And I was thinking about, like, there's all these Hollywood movies now that are based on, and they'll say true stories, but there's hardly any truth in it at all. And it's so there's so much lies
like
out
Braveheart.
there. Well, I mean, yeah.
Hey, easy.
Yeah, I know.
Don't you dare go near Braveheart. Some things are too sacred to criticize.
Because, like, when I was
you'll feel the swift back of my hand.
Back in the day when I was in university, they made this movie, based on a true story about aliens that brought LSD to the earth to bring world peace.
Wait, isn't that how you met Chad?
How did I miss that one?
Yeah, so it was like this whole thing. My friend Scott's like, hey, you got to watch this movie. It's based on a true story. And it's about...
Real quick, can somebody in the retelling of your world's events, can someone ever have a high sing-songy voice? Like, hey, it's always monotonous, slightly tripped out.
It was like times of the hippies and the
so I'm like, the 80s I want it to be open, because I want to know what's going on, and I don't want to be like Luke. And so then, so he's like, yeah, it's based on these aliens that brought LSD to the earth to bring world peace. And I knew that couldn't be true. Because where were the aliens? Who would they buy it from? They'd have to go to New York, or where were they going to get it? So I knew immediately that couldn't be true.
That was
Good
it.
Point.
Well, no. Thanks for really just taking the baton and running with it. You basically just Aaron. I handed
off course.
Yeah, I handed it to Aaron. Aaron rounded the corner. He's making good strides. He hands it to you, and then you just jumped on a skateboard and went around a whirlybird in circles. Thanks for nothing. Luke, can you please write the ship? Chad
was gonna write the ship. I felt.
Yeah, like. I was gonna. Never mind. Hey, this Chad. Is what I was thinking that I was confronted with this problem personally like 3 weeks ago, and several friends of mine were sharing with me on Facebook that I had to watch a documentary or like a mini series called Plandemic or something like that. And it's basically the whole idea that this global pandemic that we're in was all planned and staged, and something to do with taking vaccines and blah, blah, blah. So at first, like for 2 or 3 minutes, I start watching it and I'm like, oh, this is crazy.
2 or 3 minutes.
My eyeballs are like, I'm feeling pressure in my brain and like heart rate speeding up. And then I thought to myself, you know what? I should probably Google really quick.
Oh yeah,
And
that's how you find out if it's real, if you Google it.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm actually a fan of Googling still. I think Google's still my friend. So I just did a quick Google search and I actually did read several articles about this thing and then, try to take in a few different perspectives. And then I quickly deleted it and moved on in life. So I do feel like, in some way this has affected me and I need this conversation.
See there, Chad got in a canoe and he started rowing. So we were making
welcome.
progress, but it just wasn't great progress. Luke just running again.
I think what we're doing is we're addressing two sides of this. One is, Aaron, you started off looking at how do we engage in the conversation and how challenging it is, how often we're not listening and we're just speaking out what our thoughts are and doing it in an aggressive way. And so there's knowing how to engage in the conversation, and then there's this other side to it, which is really knowing how to listen. So it's knowing where I stand and what is the truth that I'm supposed to be speaking and knowing what needs to be said, but it's also listening to the other side, and those are the two pieces that allow a good conversation to happen. So if I'm not researching, figuring out what's true and what's not in a conversation, in a debate, then I'm lost. I don't know the context. I'm just speaking into nothing. And if I don't know where I'm standing and I don't know what the truth is, then I'm also just speaking my own opinion. And I'm getting lost in that. So I think those are the issues that we're trying to tackle in this conversation, and they are challenging.
And I think that we need some rules for life, in the words of Jordan Peterson. I think we need to not go into this just casually or without a plan, because I think there's so much information that if you're not strategic and these things are made quite convincingly, I think you can become swept up in them. And so I think you need a game plan, not just for us, what am I going to think about any specific issue? I think it's how am I going to interpret issues at all? And what, as a follower of Jesus, is sort of my mindset in a macro sense about conversations and viewpoints and things. And so for me, I kind of was, in looking at this question, how can I not become distracted, confused, or led astray? I kind of came to three questions. And the three questions I think I want to always ask myself is, who am I? What's my mission? And what is truth? I think if followers of Jesus would focus on those three questions as sort of a blueprint for then engaging in conversation, interpreting information, and then also sharing their opinions, I think it would really be helpful. So who am I? Is that I'm first a follower of Jesus. Right? That's my primary allegiance. I am not liberal or conservative or this party or that party or for vaccines or against vaccines or blah, blah, blah. All the different sides that you can pick. I think as followers of Jesus, the first time you lose me is when I get the sense that you care more about this specific issue than your primary allegiance to Jesus, to the Bible, to truth, as Scripture would define it. And so for me, it starts with that part of it, right? Identity. And maybe I can just do one of these at a time and you guys can react. But isn't a huge part of this, Aaron, isn't a huge part of it identity first? If you don't have that piece right, then of course you're going to get led astray and kind of fill that vacuum in other ways.
Yeah, and I think we confuse sometimes what is attached to our identity in Jesus. I think sometimes and we actually think that these secondary things actually belong in the identity of Jesus. And that in itself, I think, can be really destructive because it makes it impossible to connect with someone when we add these attachments, because you in order for you to come to Jesus, you also have to have these attachments, which may or may not be relevant to being a follower of Jesus, or they may be downstream from following Jesus, meaning as you come to know Jesus, as he transforms your life, maybe some of those things will become evident eventually, but we get so hung up on those attachments.
Well, and like to give a perfect example, so Aaron and I and some of the Steiger Minneapolis team, along with a lot of other churches and ministries, were kind of down at the very site where George Floyd was murdered on Saturday. We were there on Wednesday. A team of ours was there on Wednesday, and then a group of us were there on Saturday. And it's a very surreal environment right now. I feel like despite the cynicism that maybe some people have towards it, I actually feel like it's very genuine and authentic in the sense that it's kind of brought together a lot of people who want the world to be better.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a sense that it was like gratuitous or people were there to just cause trouble or whatever. I really felt this genuine heart of, I want to make a difference. And that's awesome. I connect with that.
Absolutely.
And Aaron had several conversations. I had one conversation with different people young guys, especially, and they were so authentically passionate about wanting to see justice. Though it was pretty clear that there would have been a lot of things we would disagree with them about. And so if you would come in, let me just pick a really dumb example. Like, let's come in with, and you really believe that environmental crisis is not that bad, right? That's your view on that.
Yeah.
Or it's fake. It's just an exaggerated paradigm or whatever. If you had come in and decided that you also had to make sure that you found agreement on that issue, you would have totally lost your platform to share the gospel, because that would have alienated that person who very much disagreed with that potential issue. But I think in a deeper sense, that's what followers of Jesus do. They kind of draw the line in the sand around things that make people just go, well, I don't want to hear you. And the opposite was true of these young guys. They wanted to hear about our view on justice and who Jesus was and what he thought of people. But that's because we had, I think, the maturity and the wisdom and the self-control to not make it about things that just don't matter. I could get much more specific as it relates to the whole race thing. There are some peripheral issues that people refuse to concede on, and in doing so completely throw away their potential for witnessing.
Yeah, and I think it's about what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
Are you trying to win a political argument or make yourself feel good because you think your political view is the right one, or are you trying to win these people to Jesus? And if your heart is to win these people to Jesus, then you're going to lay down, not because you don't think those things are relevant, not because you're compromising your view on those things, but because you want to reach these people. And you start by connecting with people, finding the humanity and also the places where you actually can very much agree with them. So like you're connecting with people, a lot of them that we were connecting with, hardcore radical left. I mean, I was talking to some people that were like Marxist revolutionaries and all this crazy stuff that want to do stuff that politically I think is dumb, but that's not, but what I can relate to is they see that there's a problem in the world.
Absolutely.
They want to be part of changing the world. They want to be part of seeing something, doing something about it. I can relate to that. In fact, I was talking to these people and saying, man, we can agree that human life matters.
Yeah.
And we can agree that there is something right and there is something wrong. And that when something is wrong, we need to do something about it. And then you talk about what is our basis for that. And we begin to connect on the very core views of being made in God's image and morality and a problem of, ultimately the problem of sin. But I can connect with people and I'm not worried about these secondary political things that get in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm off here, but I think it's connected. You know, Jesus was always very empathetic with what people were dealing with. He connected on that level, and then he talked about truth through that. So it's like when the woman came to the well, you know, and it would have been really it would have been very laborious every day to have to walk in the hot sun to collect this water and bring it back to where she was living, you know, and Jesus said, well, let me tell you about, I can give you water where you'll never be thirsty again. And so he related to this need she had, what she was doing. And and so then immediately she was like, wanted to know more because he understood what she was dealing with here in the case of having to get this water every day in the hot sun. And he said, I can give you water where you'll never be thirsty again. And so like you're saying, Aaron, these, you know, you see what is the core of this? Why are people on the street? What is it they want to know? And then you say, yes. And you know what? The answer to all of this can be found in Jesus. And this is why. And so to me, this is super important that we understand what is behind the action. You know, where's the Jesus? Because Jesus is in there. He is.
I like at how we come at this historically for us as a mission in a sense, because when I joined Steigen, when I first started hearing David speak and talk, one of the things that hit me was that a lot of the work we were doing was reaching into clubs or festivals or reaching kind of a youth culture that was seen maybe even more so back then as fringe or subculture in some way, or at least by the church, you know, seen as like, oh, it's this fringe group who have funny ideas about Jesus and stuff. And yet, David, you would say things like, if You know, like you guys toured Sao Paulo in the early 2000s and went to places like Madame Satan. And you said, if Madame Satan moved into the neighborhood of the church, what would we do? And very often the church's response is to, let's go pray against Madame Satan. Let's have a prayer walk and pray against it. And it's the enemy. And you know, and you would say they're not the enemy. And now we're in a time where maybe, hopefully, we're more aware as a church that this is the majority of society we're talking about. We're talking about people who have a very different worldview to us as followers of Jesus. And often the way we'll react to those things, or the way people are addressing different issues and topics, is we'll be like, they're all wrong. And we'll be like, we got to attack them, or they're the enemy. We've got to come at them hard. And no, we've got to apply the same principles, which, as you just pointed out, David, are biblical principles. It's looking at Jesus's life as an example. They're not the enemy. They're people that we should be loving, listening to, coming alongside, and finding common ground. And I think that's what, Aaron, what you were talking about is like finding common ground. There were things you would disagree on, but you were able to find things that you both care about. And then you're able to connect. And that's where you're able to have in-way. Jesus did that all the time. That is not watering down the truth or the gospel. That is connecting with people and finding a way in to really connect and say, we share the same heart, but there's something that that you need to know. And, you know, and it's listening, but and then sharing the truth. So we got to learn to do that again.
Yeah. And I think that because of our social media age, we can yell at each other and kind of straw man argument and do all this stuff. But man, when you sit down or you talk to someone and first of all, you listen and really listen and understand the heart, and you understand a lot of the core of it isn't bad. Like the core of you may not agree, and I don't agree often with where they go with it, but the core of it, I can actually say, that's awesome that you believe in justice. That's awesome that you want to fight for something outside of yourself. I respect that. And I'm here with you. And just by listening and even complimenting that, your ability to speak to them and share your views, as well as you stop seeing them as just us versus them and the enemy, which of course there's destructive things that people believe, and they have consequences on themselves and society. And we, as followers of Jesus, we should be speaking truth, but it's about our approach and how we see people. And do we see them as human, or do we see them as this entity that we're fighting against?
Yeah. And I mean, how ridiculous, right? Like, if consensus is the prerequisite for being in, how do you explain our denominations? Right. How do you explain any single church where hardly any two people agree on everything? I mean, come on. Like, but honestly, I do think that is the heart of this. Is there's an antagonism, and there's this bizarre thing where people are, in the name of defending symbols and ideals, will trash people. Mm-hmm. And it's just so weird. It's like you get this, the vitriol often seems to be motivated from this desperate attempt to defend some notion of how the country should be, or what this should look like, and it's totally detached from the individuals involved. And again, that's why my second one here is, what's my mission? Because I think if you lose focus on what God has actually called us to do, and that's, you know, the ones I have here are Matthew 22:37-40. You know, love your Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And then the second commandment, of course, is love your neighbor as yourself. And then Matthew 28:18-20 is the Great Commission, right? Go and tell everyone about Jesus. These are our missions. And I think that we have become way too confused about what our purpose is on earth. It's not to protect this camp. And honestly, this would probably get me in trouble. I think there are some heretical theologies that rob us of the motivation to help people, because we don't really think it's up to us, or we have much of a choice in it anyway. But I won't go too far down that road. But honestly, I think you're indifferent to methodology. You're indifferent to people when you think that it's already that, we're the in group, you're the out group. And I think that there are some theologies that actually contribute to that. But how much of this chat is about keeping that mission front and center, and not, we think it's almost like basic, you know, that kids understand that, but then when you become an adult, you become sophisticated at all these other things. Isn't it just about remembering who I am, son of God, daughter of God, remembering what my purpose is here, love people, tell them about Jesus? If we would keep that in mind, wouldn't that solve a lot of this?
Well, man, it sure would. And sign me up, you know. I think that
I know, if it was that simple, right?
Right. Well, I think one of the problems, and something that I hear coming from both you and Aaron in this, and probably from all of us, is that so often when I look at the life of Jesus and how he went about navigating relationships with people who typically disagreed with him, at least at the start, it was by way of invitation. And what I hear you guys saying is that you listened, you engaged as a result of that listening and connecting with people, and by being present with them, by serving alongside them, they're inviting you to speak into their lives. And I think that we're so maybe guilty. I'm maybe guilty as a Christian of just forcing my way in, like, I want to tell you my view. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I think matters, rather than really having the heart of Jesus and like, God, give me an invitation into this person's heart or into this person's life. And God, help them to see that what I carry is so much bigger than even the conversation that they might think is so critical and so crucial.
Right.
But they're not going to see that apart from the Holy Spirit revealing it. And so I guess, just praying God makes a way for us to be invited more consistently into these spaces.
Yeah.
You know what you're saying, Chad, about listening? There's a long time ago, my father told me that I needed to read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And it's like written in 1930s.
And many years later.
I read in college.
Yeah. And I wish that my father didn't just say that. I wish he would have sat me down 20 years ago or 30 instead. Here's the flipping book. Now you're going to sit here till you read it. Now, so I want to encourage all of our listeners. It's got really weird language because it's really old, and they got
modern versions. They got updated versions.
He talks about what he hung out with Teddy Roosevelt, stuff like that. So it's pretty old book. But so How to Win Friends and Influence People, and some of it's humanistic ideas. But one of the things he talks about all the time is he said one of the things that you need to do is become genuinely interested in other people.
Yep.
Genuinely interested in other people. And as a Jesus follower, we should be the most interested in other people, actually want to hear what they have to say.
Oh,
and
so profound.
It's so simple. And the book is full of stuff like that. That's like, man.
I think that impacts our evangelism, though, because I think that sometimes we've made evangelism about me. And that I am going to make myself feel good because I'm going to share the gospel to this person, where we actually confuse the goal. The goal is not for you to share the gospel. The goal is for them to come to know Jesus. And I know that feels like the same thing, but it's not, because if you're going to really listen to people, it's going to be a process. And it may be slower, and it may not be me getting to make myself feel better because I spouted out the gospel. It's me listening, hearing, challenging things, yes, but over time, yes, pointing them to the message of the cross for sure. But it's not about me and my desire to preach the gospel. It's my desire to see them come to know Jesus, however long or to what process that might take.
It's an interesting combination we're talking about, because it's knowing, like I was saying before, like trying to define the different aspects. It's knowing how to listen, but knowing who I am and where I'm going and what I believe. And those two things walk hand in hand. So although we're saying we got to know how to listen to other people, Ben, you've started with the questions, who am I and what's my mission? And I think that is the right place to start. And it's like, it made me think of when Jesus washes the feet of the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. A number of the translations, and I can't remember if it's in two of the Synoptic Gospels or not, but it says the same thing, where it says Jesus knew who he was and where he was going, and then he washes the feet of the disciples. And it's just interesting how it starts with that. Like, he knew his glory, his power, his authority, and yet he humbles himself and he serves and he washes people's feet. And then when Peter questions it and says, "You're our master," and Jesus says, "Yes, you're right, I am, but this is what I've come to do." And turning it then in our situation, it's like we need to know who we are in Jesus, that we stand on clear and solid truth, so that we can engage in a humble way and in a loving way in conversation. Because if we don't do that, we'll be doing the same thing that the world is doing today. And this is a big thing that bothers me all the time. We are accepting a worldview that is around us without realizing it, without perceiving, and we're living by it as followers of Jesus. We'll call ourselves followers of Jesus, and yet we'll be living and acting based on a worldview that is not ours. It's of the world. And so it's like the worldview that says there is no truth and therefore we're left with nothing but our own opinion is one that is coming clearly all the time in the church, and even, as you guys are pointing out, in our evangelism. So if I think that all I have is my own opinion and some good arguments that I've built up to try to defend that opinion, I'm going to come in conversations just trying to yell that and not listening. And I'm not secure enough to listen to where people are at. I'm just yelling my own opinion. And that is not where we stand. That is not where we stand. I just want to read a quote from a humanistic secular philosopher from our time, Terry Eagleton. And this is what he says about truth and about meaning. It's in a book called The Meaning of Life. He says, a meaning to life put there by God and one conjured up by ourselves may not be the only possibilities. Meaning is also an endlessly unfinished process, a shuffling from one sign to another without fear or hope of closure. That's what we've been told all our lives in school, in university, in media, that nobody really knows, that we're just moving from one thing to another. We're all on a journey. We're all trying to figure things out. Well, if you've forgotten this, that is not true. That's not where we stand. The truth is clear and solid. It is absolute. And the Bible says it. And people with a lot of common sense that haven't quite found Jesus yet know it as well. That's why, sometimes we'll quote people like Jordan Peterson here, who come to points of wisdom also without having Jesus in their lives yet. But he'll say, speak to the best of your ability the truth, right? That's one of his things. Speak the truth to the best of your ability. And then he also says, and in conversation, listen to the other person because you might learn something. Now, those are the same principles. They're inherited from Christianity. They're inherited from the Bible. We have that. That's the ground we stand on. We need to read our Bibles and learn to do that we would know how to speak truth and know that truth is real, and to listen to others. I think that's crucial.
No, absolutely. And I think it's all of these paradoxes and all of these tensions, right? Because as a follower of Jesus, we are confident and secure, but that allows us to be humble and teachable. It's not this weird thing that it's like, well, I'm a Christian, so that means I know everything, or I instantly hold the moral high ground on everything. Like, there are some opinions that you might be wrong on, and heaven forbid you have something to learn.
Yep.
It's like that first point you made, David, that kind of simple but mind-blowing revelation. Take genuine interest in other people. How about add to that, actually go around thinking that you might also have something to learn. Exhibit some genuine humility. And the problem is, you said, Luke, our confidence is in the knowing, but our confidence is in the knowing the gospel. And the gospel says, God did for you what you could not do for yourself. You were totally unworthy, and Jesus rescued you. That we take confidence in our lack of confidence. We take confidence in being rescued. We don't take confidence in our brilliant minds or our theological prowess or we have the corner of truth on every political issue and every sociological issue. We take confidence in Jesus. That allows us to know where our frame of reference is in terms of the truth. Our identity is secure, so we're not so insecure that, if someone criticizes me, I'm going to crumble and do an ad hominem attack on someone. I'm confident, but confident enough to be able to learn. And I think that's part of it. And I think we can kind of go on to this truth conversation because I think it's so important. That was my third point, right? Know who I am, what's my mission, and what is truth. Because I think that gives us the confidence in a world that is essentially on shifting sand. We have that actual frame of reference. There's a really great article that Tristan, one of the guys on our team, shared with me called The Quest for Truth and Freedom. He writes this: the word truth used to always carry this transcendent quality. However, in our recent modern world, we have become used to relative truth. We have become used to relative truth, your truth and my truth. And now post-truth describes people for whom truth simply does not matter, except when we disagree with someone else's truth, and then we call them fake, right? And so now we live in this incredibly rocky foundation where we can't really be confident about everything. And so we kind of have to almost overcompensate with our aggression, with our anger, because we don't have the confidence in that transcendent thing that we can be humbled by and point to at the same time.
Well, it's like what George Orwell said. He said that the best books are those that tell you what you know already. And so it's this idea that I can't learn anything from anyone. I don't know if this is the wrong time to bring this up.
No, go for it.
But I'm talking about, we're talking about you need to listen. I think that in our proclamation, because I believe in proclamation,
Sure.
I believe in standing in front of a big crowd of people and preaching. I mean, we do that all the time. You guys did it in Minneapolis, and we've seen thousands and thousands of people find Jesus through proclamation. But what makes your proclamation effective is when you're speaking, they know that you've listened.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Absolutely.
And that's evident in how you speak.
exactly. Yeah. It's like the way I talk, they know that I've listened, that I know what they're feeling. I'm not up there just giving this, like, what you can tell when someone's an imposter. You know what I mean? Like when but I remember when I was going to the University of Minnesota, and a guy named Josh McDowell spoke there, and he was everywhere. They put all over and posters everywhere. Maximum sex, Josh McDowell, because it's like
Maximum sex.
yeah, because they wanted all the University of Minnesota students to go there. Maximum sex, Josh McDowell, and then he was going to talk about sexuality and I don't know. So, but all the students at the university knew he was an imposter, knew it was fake. He wasn't really from the scene. He wasn't from the University of Minnesota. He wasn't part of the scene, and because I was very much part of the scene.
Or whether that you don't necessarily have to be specifically part of your scene, but he just wasn't.
No,
in touch
but I
with
mean
what
the
was
university. Okay, but I guess my point is, so they shipped a bunch of people from Bethel University and stuff, and filled up Kaufman Union with all these people from the outside, and it wasn't even people because I went to the event, and I could tell that none of the people there were from the university. And people know if you're an imposter. So if you want to speak into the scene at the University of Minnesota, you need to be a part of it. And then when you get up to speak, they can tell by your language, the way that you identify what they're thinking, and then you bring Jesus into it. Man, is that powerful. But that we need to be doing more of that in our proclamation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not that you have nothing to say. I don't think that's what anyone was implying by listening. I think, like you said, when you listen, you really listen, because it's funny how that's a skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can kind of do the perfunctory, I'm not speaking, that means I'm listening, but to not speak doesn't mean you're listening.
Exactly.
Right. I've been trying to do this, part of this Invitation to a Journey book that I've been reading. It talks about trying to do 10 minutes of silence, because my prayers are talking. Shocker, right? And so I've been trying to do 10 minutes of silence. You want to have an exercise in how much your brain races? Try doing 10 minutes of silence. It is incredibly difficult. It's amazing. It is an untamable beast. I mean, my mind is just like whoosh, whoosh. And I'm thinking about, but he talks about in the book. He says, don't be hard on yourself. Just learning to be silent, learning to think and reflect and be in tune with the Holy Spirit is a practice. Yeah. So even the idea of listening, to really listen,
that's even another level, actually.
It is
to tune yourself to them, to shut off your thoughts and to hear what they're saying, and then ask clarifying questions, like to understand, is really actually way more difficult than you think. And it's incredibly powerful, because when you do it and you really do that, people feel validated, they feel respected, and then you understand them better, so you can actually speak more relevantly to them. But just applying that is a powerful tool in communicating to people that you're really listening.
And you then combine that with the power of the Holy Spirit to give you, I think we have, again, in the spectral reality of our theology, I think a lot of people have overcorrected, and we don't have the power of the Holy Spirit like we should. And I think one of the powers that the Holy Spirit would give us is insight into the heart, the questioner behind the question, or in our case, the commenter behind the comment. And I think God would give you that real insight into what is the real heart cry behind the question that's being asked. So, all right. So how do we pivot this? Because there's so many good directions this could go in. I think maybe just to give some more practical rules, maybe we could start with that. In engaging with people, in interpreting information, what are some just really practical things to keep in mind that would help us be more effective, and we can maybe combine it with the last question of how do we do this in such a way that would not hurt our witness. I have a list here, but Luke, you just look bright-eyed and ready to go. So how about you start us off?
Okay, so a few that are coming to my mind. One that David emphasized really well, I think, just in that last piece, was just the importance of listening well if we're going to speak. And so having that as a practice in my life, in my day-to-day, in conversation, we're gifted differently. And so we'll each have our ways and opportunities in which we'll be sharing our faith, and we'll be speaking truth into situations. We're speaking from the context here of a number of us get to sometimes do proclamation evangelism or to be on a podcast and share our thoughts. But that really will only come across well if in other parts of our lives we're reading, talking to people, listening, caring, praying for people, asking God for his heart for people, to really feel and understand that. And I think that should be a regular part of our lives. And having solid ground on the truth for me it's not just head knowledge. It's knowing who I am in Jesus. And I think your questions helped us, think through that a bit there, Ben, because if I know who I am in Jesus, then I don't feel the need, and neither do I see it my role to convince people and to make people think the same way I do. And I think that's really important. We were out on Saturday, as well as all our teams from all over Steiger were out on the streets with the Hope Beyond Fear movement. And it was an awesome time. And I was out there with the team here from Wrocław, and some of the guys were coming over and asking me questions during engagement with people in this park where we were, because they were having, some of them for the first time, great conversations with people. And then they were getting asked questions. And so then they'd come back to talk, and a number of them would come over to me and saying, what do you say when somebody says this or somebody asks that? And one of the things that people find the most encouraging and giving peace in those environments is to remember that it's God's power that convinces people, and it's God's work in people's hearts. It's not my role. I just need to share openly, honestly, listen, engage in conversation, and let God do the rest. It's not in my own strength. So it's trusting that God is at work. And then I won't come across attacking like that. And one last point I wanted to make is just in that listening to recognize how I'm coming across. And I think we miss this a lot as believers in engaging in conversations today, is we don't realize how we're coming across. So listening to people isn't just to understand what they think and where they're at, but it's also to understand how they perceive us. And that's shifted considerably over the years. And we're missing the point a lot of the time on that. And one key one that I've been thinking a lot about recently is how the concept of morality has shifted, and how the view of where we as Christians stand in that realm has shifted. So maybe 50 years ago, people kind of generally thought, Christianity has a moral ground to stand on. It's like, if you're a good Christian, then you'll be a good person and you'll be doing good things. That's radically changed in media today. Ben, you brought this up a little while ago. I can't remember the context, but you brought up that video clip by who was it? It did a video clip on the LGBT community, and it was real specifically attacking Christian protesters in the environment of the LGBT movement. I can't remember which one it is.
I can't remember either. As have I.
Oh, I can see her. Blonde girl. You like her. I've forgotten her name.
Liza Minnelli.
No. Big star. Big pop star. No,
Taylor Swift.
Yes, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift's video.
Chad he has a poster of Taylor Swift behind his
Swift.
You know what I'm talking about.
Never mind. I shouldn't talk about that.
Taylor Swift.
Yes, because the video that she brought out was a strong criticism on Christians.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
And so, but the point I'm making here is, if we're not aware of how we're coming across as Christians to people today, then we'll be thinking that we can say things like, you got to be good or do good things. And they'll be going like, what are you talking about? You guys are haters, bigots. You're look at all the wars you've caused. And if anybody who engages in a good, healthy debate, an intelligent and kind of loving debate, is somebody who knows how they're being perceived and knows what arguments go against what they're saying. And you're able to answer those or respond to those in that conversation, to say, look, I know that we've made mistakes, or I know that this has been said many times in the name of Christianity, and I want to show you a different way, or to break that perception. You know, we've got to be aware of those things.
What do you think, Chad?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I guess the one maybe analogy, or like the picture from this past week that was maybe most impressive to me was the one, I don't know if you guys saw this, Mr. Rogers in the kiddie pool with the black police officer, and he's basically washing his feet and in this little kiddie pool. And it was, you know, the context is a little different, but extremely close to what the narrative that we're currently living in. And I think that it just reminds me that if my heart is to serve, and if my heart is that coming with a spirit of how do I serve this person? How do I bless this person? How do I meet the needs of this person? Then I think it changes the way in which I approach somebody, and it changes the whole tone of conversation and what we're doing, and that ability to actually listen, not just to listen, but to really hear what somebody's saying. And so, I think this is actually really helpful for me on a personal level.
Yeah. Yeah. I just have a couple of bullet points, and you can add, or David. I think part of the challenge and some of the frustration, and Aaron and I talk about this, is just the lost art of nuance, in recognizing that there are always two sides, right? The first thing you hear, it often can seem compelling until you hear the defense, Proverbs. Right? The Proverbs. It's rarely pure evil against pure good, right? In almost all circumstances, there are subtleties and layers and factors and complexities. You lose me when everything is always positioned as good versus evil, rather than recognizing, as Solzhenitsyn says, that, you know, the dividing line between good and evil runs through every single human heart. And that is at the heart of tribalism. Is it's much more convenient to vilify a whole group out there rather than to recognize the sort of inherent human problem that we all are corrupt, we all do things poorly, and you would love to hear a little bit of that us humility and not them antagonism in a lot of the comments. You know, one thing I wrote down is take your time. The world doesn't need your opinion as much as your understanding. I think that if we would seek for more understanding and less sharing, then the world would call on our opinion, because we'd actually have something worth sharing. And I think for most of us, for 99.999% of us, the world is not waiting to hear what you think about this. So just chill, think it through, seek understanding, think wisdom. You know, we have too many people who are, and I'll be guilty of this too at times. We have too many people who are an inch deep on 1,000 topics rather than a mile deep on a few. I think we should strive to be, you know, primarily follower of Jesus, know your Bible, but after that, maybe go for a different approach and be a real expert on a few things from a Jesus perspective. Because too many of us read one half article, skimmed through about the topic, and then we heard from our aunt's hairdresser about it, and now we're experts on it. And it's like, no, I want to be someone who's deep and has understanding and who has the patience, you know, like it says in James, to be slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. Man, how much of my conflict in my life would I have avoided by just following those 3 basic commands? And so, I don't know, those are some of the things for me. You know, read widely and skeptically, be open-minded but skeptical at the same time. You're open to new ideas, but you don't take everything at face value. How many of us have gotten in the position of being like, ooh, that seems right, boom, share. And then 10 hours later, it's like, no, didn't seem as legit as it was. So I don't know. Those are some quick thoughts. Aaron, you got the floor. David, you can close us. Then Chad's going to dance, and then I'm going to hit the outro music, and then we're all getting tacos.
I'm going swimming.
Like how it's well scripted.
I think you nailed it. I think humility and grace, just approaching people with humility and grace and knowing that you could be wrong. My pastor said that this Sunday, and I loved it. He said, you could be wrong. And I think it's like, wow, that's kind of simple, profound truth when it comes to how we engage in these conversations, especially on the peripheral issues, and just being humble.
Yeah. David, you got some closing thoughts before we
and obviously, okay, you know, the most important thing, You need to seek God. You need to make that the thing, and then you need to know His Word. You need to meditate on it. You need to not just read it, but let it change you. Don't be like someone who looks at their face in the mirror and forgets what they've seen. And then you need to inform yourself. Don't just look at one source of media and get all your opinions from it. And my experience has been that the more boring the source, the more accurate it probably is going to be. That's why the BBC, it's an English.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah. And
You guys are welcome for the BBC.
It's very boring, and it's like you can hardly take it.
There must be so much truth in Luke's book.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. So, usually the more boring the news source, the more accurate it is. So read, also I found that financial publications are usually more accurate too when they talk about the news, because their only bottom line is they want to make money, and so they try to look at the news more exactly.
How's that not biased?
That doesn't make any sense. That's like
yes, it does.
That didn't make. You had me until that one.
Don't worry, you gave me a perfect cutoff point for Kippy right there. You were
and also and remember that it's not. Don't just watch all these documentaries and think they're true, about the aliens and all of that. It's just
there we go.
All right, we're good.
All right, that's it.
Okay.
We're good. That was good. Anyway, I think this was. Man, it's always hard after that. It takes great skill to transition it with any seriousness after that. You were good. You were good, but then they just ran out of tracks.
Yep.
And then the train was just kind of on the dirt and the grass.
Well, sometimes I'm like Chad, I just start talking and I hope that something good comes out at the end.
And occasionally it works really well.
Hey, and 1 out of 11 ain't bad.
Right. So I know if this is going to land somewhere if I keep talking.
Yeah. Just keep at it.
All right. Well, here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. I want a taco, so I'm going to wrap this up. This podcast is going to come out 24 hours from now. Aaron, that was dope. Give me one of these.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
That was
thanks,
some
Aaron.
great
Come on, me too, huh?
Come on. All right. Gosh, get yourself a hat and a whistle and zip it. All right.
Hey.
Check out this podcast.
Am I muted still?
No.
Good. Okay. Hey, stop bullying Gary in the comments.
Oh, come on.
You should listen to what he has to say.
The other day we were having a prayer time before going out to do our outreach, and he kept wanting food, and I was like, "Get out of here! We don't have food, Gary." You know what I mean? Get out of here. Anyway, thank you for listening to the Provoke Inspire podcast. Check this podcast out tomorrow, and all of the podcasts that are happening this week. You guys are listening. We are still on the track to break the record for the 5th straight month, and if we do it for 6 straight months, Chad is going to go streaking from here to Wyoming. So,
wow. I've already done that. I need to do something even more impressive.
It'll really run out of steam halfway through Montana. I don't know my geography, so I'm just going to hope no one checks that out. Leave us a rating, leave us a review, and I think that's it, Red Boys. Taco time. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.